Hello and welcome to the Legal Eagle. Our guest on the show today is a parliamentarian, the country's youngest designated senior advocate, one of the most recognized faces that you might have seen. He's also additional former Solicitor General of India, national spokesperson of the Congress Party. But for me, he's someone who's a legal doyen, someone who's a multitasker, one of the country's most brilliant legal minds. I welcome on the show Dr. Abhishek Manu Singhvi. Sir, as I welcome you on the show, it's an honor to have you on the show. And my first question, before I go on to the complex matters that you've done, whether it's telecom matters, arbitration matters, politically extremely sensitive matters, before I come across to you being a workaholic, I start at the very start. You come from the city of Jodhpur. I know the earliest memories you have at 4 years of age are going on the streets of Jodhpur when your father was fighting an election and running around saying, Takri do vote, Takri do vote. Tell us a little bit about the time. Your own father is a statesman, a parliamentarian himself. Give us a sense of Jodhpur and your own father, your own memories.
Well, obviously you've been reading some biographical articles, but yes, that's long back, but very clear in the recesses of my memory. The first clarity was about three and a half years when I had an illness, and the second clarity is the incident you mentioned. Jodhpur is our hometown. I was born there. It's one of those fantastic laid-back places where eating and gupshup are the creeds, and you have that certain ethic about Jodhpur which you can't have in any other city. Well, my father fought as a 29-and-a-half-year-old young person for the Lok Sabha elections from Jodhpur in 1962. And I was all of under 4 years, and we were not in very good economic circumstances. So from the flat where we lived, across the road was Sochti Gate, which is the main gate for the entrance to the city. And because he was an independent, denied the Congress ticket at a young age, he chose the symbol of Takri. Takri is a word for the wheels of justice, the balancing scales of justice which you see with Goddess Justice blindfolded. So Takri is the Rajasthani word for that. And of course not very frequently, but quite a number of times I would sit on the shoulders of one of our campaigners or friends, and used to have in those days those megaphones, because a lot of the technology was not there, so you'd be in a car and you had megaphones. So people would be campaigning and I would be made to say Takri ko vote do. So that was a very nice warm feeling. It has nothing to do with politics, because I remained strictly non-political for the next 35 odd years.
Yes. And
I enjoyed very much my profession, and in that time I appeared across the political spectrum. But subsequently when I joined the Congress Party, in that sense it connects with that 4-year-old incident.
You also said your father taught you how to transcend boundaries, not think narrowly.
My father was not a politician at all in that sense. He's a very remarkable amalgam of somebody who fought Lok Sabha, was in Rajya Sabha, but he transcended political boundaries completely. First and foremost, he was a man of literature. He could converse in Sanskrit till the 70s. In late 70s, he distinctly, I remember, complained to me. He said that his Sanskrit is going down because he has nobody to converse with. So he was a master of English literature. He was at Harvard, where he wanted to go for Hindi, Sanskrit and English literature, whereupon my grandfather told him, that is all very well to have these interests, but you are the greatest fool. Go and acquire some degree which can help you to earn some bread in the future. So he was a man of literature, philosophy, extremely well read, and a fantastic orator. He was in public life, is the way I would like to describe him, much more than politics. And frankly, people say that he's been associated with the BJP. His association was very much of a literary, philosophical nature with Vajpayee ji, with whom he shared this love for poetry. It was with people who transcended political boundaries, and even in his parliamentary role, he was never. Of course, part of the reason is that era has gone now. There's a lot of magnanimity in that era. There was a lot of close personal touch. And he always strove for ideas. He invented the word Lokpal at Nehru's very interesting comment at that time. Then he was a crusader for ombudsman in all forms. Vajpayee ji, he explained the philosophical concept of Setu Bandhanam, which is the bridge connecting India to Indians overseas, the Vanshaj of India, which led to the entire NRI movement. It was his report all this, when India's most famous NRI returned to India is NRI Divas now, Mahatma Gandhi returning on 9th January. These are all his ideas. He invented Law Day 26th, which now the government of India has taken over as Constitution Day. In front of me, he wrote down the charter in his own hands more than 25-30 years ago. And Law Day was celebrated every day, and he was president of the Supreme Court Bar for many terms, right through. And now I'm glad that the government has taken it as Constitution Day. So he was a man of ideas, constantly, and of course he was in public life, because you don't get translation of ideas except being in public life. Right. But you can't call him a politician. Right. And lastly, I would like to think of myself also much less talented than him, very much fewer versatilities than him, but not really a politician. I don't like the word politician, to be frankly. I'd say I am a person who's a full professional, but in public life.
I would have to speak about that a little bit more, but my second question would now be about your schooling. You topped 250 schools. You went to St. Columbus, where you were a topper from the very start, from KG to 8th, and then also you were topping. I've also read, and you went to the very prestigious Economic Honours course at St. Stephen's. Your batchmates were Justice Chandrachud, Justice Sanjay Kishan Kaul. Even there, you were a very good student, almost a topper there as well. So what is the reason for that? I also read an anecdote where I've heard about how you went to your principal and you told your principal you want to study higher Hindi.
Well, as far as Hindi is concerned, you understand that ours was a very literary atmosphere. My mother in that era is the author of 4 books in Hindi. My father, as I told you, was multilingual, including conversation, not only writing in Sanskrit. I had a glorious time in St. Columbus School, where I spent from KG to 11th. In those days, there was no 12th. And I always joke to my family and my friends that after school, it has been always downhill for me, because you cannot do better than what I did in school. I was a hard-working, serious kind of a studious kind of chap. I topped all the 5 sections of my class 9. In those days we had senior Cambridge. So our 2 sections in Columbus, in Stephens, were all toppers. In that I came 3rd in the first year. And I must add in aside, I beat Justice Chandrachud, who was a top class student. In the next 2 years, Justice Chandrachud did extremely well. And he ultimately topped the university, and I came, I think, 4th. Okay. So, but we were all very close friends, and we were all, in a constructive way, competitive. And of course, there were other people who are in law from those economics honours batches, but it was a mesmeric hold on the country of St. Stephen's Economics Honours.
I now go across to your Cambridge years. You spent 7 years at Cambridge. You did your postgrad, your undergrad, your PhD, which is something, viewers, I want to tell you, very rarely does one do a PhD in India. Very rarely does one complete a PhD in 3 years. That was done on a thesis on emergency powers, and then you also taught there at St. John's.
I think it was a very instructive experience, because I experienced Cambridge as an undergrad, as a postgrad, and as a PhD, which is rare. So I lived across, and indeed I got married in my last year and a half in Cambridge, and my elder son was born there. So I even had married accommodation, which is a phrase used for bigger accommodation there. And it taught me the different facets of Cambridge life. It's still the most fantastic town, almost a fairy tale town, where you have to tell yourself to get out of Cambridge, because if you get used to it, then you become unfit for the world. In the last couple of years of my PhD there, I supplemented my income by, in Cambridge and Oxford we have tutorials. In Cambridge they are called supervisions. So if you are considered able and qualified, then you can teach students who are just entering undergrads. Right. So that is very instructive, because it is only 4 students at the most 5, and it's a very highly interactive process, the tutorial. So since I was in my last couple of years of the PhD, and because my own college was Trinity College, the finest college I would say amongst all the 50 odd colleges of Oxford and Cambridge, both together. But because they were so well stocked and very rich, so they had enough tutors and teachers. So I got a supervision job at St. John's, the adjacent college, where I would supervise students. Incidentally, that's the college of Justice Manmohan Singh, Dr. Manmohan Singh, ex-Prime Minister. So I taught groups of 4 to 5 students for almost a year or 8 months, and that was, it's more self-teaching, because it's a very interactive, in-depth thing. And as I said, but for a quirk of fate that my family said that you are the only son amongst 3 brothers, I would not have come back, because I was getting set into a life of an academic. And one more thing which I have noted in the just published PhD, published actually last year, for which I am very proud. It's a 2 lakh word, real solid hardcore legal research. It's a textbook. And even after 30 years on that subject of emergency powers, you'll be astonished that there is no other work of a comparative perspective. And I noted there that everybody opposed except one person, my PhD. My father is an LLM Harvard, PhD Cornell. He opposed. He virtually said that you are now wasting time. You've got a law degree, start practicing. And it's actually true, because law is a vocational subject. And in that sense, it enhanced my insecurities, because you don't even know when you'll complete a PhD. And everybody says that you are an idiot because your colleagues are practicing law. My mother, who has no relation with law, said that once he's doing something, he should allow it to be completed, and he'll be in the rat race all his life. So let's do it. So I stuck with it, and I'm so happy I did. And it has helped me in strange ways, because it gave a presumption of, and completely maybe fallacious, a presumption to those around me in my ecosystem of law that there is some erudition here.
Absolutely. And I think you're being modest when you say it's fallacious, because everybody knows it to be true. I want to ask you, what did you eat there? You're a vegetarian.
Well, that was a trauma. I remember the cold winter October evening. I remember to the day when I landed up at the gates of Trinity College with my own suitcase in a foreign land. I've never been abroad living. And the English can be very aloof in the initial stages till you come to know them. And then the first night to eat in hall, where all I could eat was mashed potatoes.
Yes.
Now, mashed potato is a great English sterling achievement, but it's pretty horrible after you eat it for 2 or 3 days. So slowly, of course, they were very considerate to start making peas and things like that, because they didn't have any vegetarians those days. Those days it was growing,
right,
but certainly nothing like today. Today it is fashionable and more the norm to be a vegetarian than even otherwise abroad.
That's true.
So eventually I started cooking. Rice and rajma were speciality which I could do reasonably well, dal.
Okay.
And then you started having friends who started converting partially to vegetarianism.
Very
We
nice.
almost burned down a small kitchenette trying to do papad one day.
Very nice.
So these are nice experiences, but I think eventually over time, as you grow in Cambridge also, you realize that there are options. But certainly hall food, which is where you communally eat together, is not a very uplifting thing in 1979 and 80. Today it is much, much better. And you didn't have enough money to go around and eat what you called at curry restaurants in Cambridge, of which there were even then quite a lot.
Okay.
But you couldn't spend eating in restaurants regularly.
You came back, Dr. Singhvi, to India from Cambridge. You started working with your father after a short stint with excise law. You'd said you'd also tried to work at the chambers of Fali Naraban, KK Venugopal. There was no vacancy. When you started working, you immediately started working on cases of GE versus Renu Sagar, something that immediately uplifted you. You did a lot of research. Nani Palkiwala was someone who you were opposing. With your research, these were cases that immediately got you into the limelight. You also had a huge contribution to the NTPC. The cases got you into the Arbitration Act, in which you helped. These were so-called golden years for you. I want you to take us back to these years.
Well, it's a long subject, fun years, lots and lots of hard work. Before I come to that, I must give you an incident that there was a particular time in December of 1984, where within a week I had to submit a chapter of the PhD. My father had to undergo a bypass,
Yes.
and my eldest son was born. That was a week which taught me the virtues of hard work and also how you have to manage everything. So I used to work all night in that huge Squire Law Library, which is now no more the library for law, almost sitting like a single person, scared of ghosts amongst the pillars. And I was very happy that Mr. McVeigh, the librarian, gave me a key for the whole building, which is done as a very rare gesture, for which I am eternally grateful to him today. My son was about a week old, and in a foreign land with limited resources, it's difficult to manage. And I used to travel in the day to London to see my father, who was, in those days, a bypass was a new thing, not such an established thing. Today it is the tonsillitis of medicine. The law practice years, arbitration has been one of my great interests, and in those early years it supported me a lot. And I have the singular achievement of having done almost all the major arbitration cases, international arbitration especially, which have gone to the Supreme Court. Now, I never wanted to join my father, We were both very independent minded, and neither of us thought it fit that I should join him. But when I found that all these 3 chambers, Fali never took a junior in those days.
Right, okay.
And the other 2 or 3 chambers I wanted to go to were overstocked. There were literally 4 people per chamber. So, in a sense of a default board, I joined him. And it was for all of 2 years, because by 1990, he left law practice, and in 1991, very early, he went as India's High Commissioner to UK. So I had less than 2 years with him, 3 years in all, I would say. Not less than 2 years, about 3 years, I would say. Renu Sagar case was largely my father, but I was assisting him. It gave me a great insight. 9 rounds of Renu Sagar, in 6 rounds of which my father and I appeared. It was a high-profile case. Of course, we were for a hopeless part of the merits, because we had lost decrees everywhere, and we were for the Indian party, which was resisting a foreign award. Palkiwala was there for the other side, the GE. Later on, somebody else in place of Palkiwala. And that matter took 6 rounds up to Supreme Court and gave me some much needed money, but a great insight into arbitration. And the importance of NTPC is it led to a furor in journals abroad, because it was the first case where a foreign-based arbitration in London was stayed by an Indian court on an interpretation of what was then in the Act and is no more, in the 1961 Act,
Yes,
Section
yes.
9.
Section 9, yes.
The footnote to this is that about 2 months, some months later, Dr. P.C. Rao, who was retiring as law secretary, telephoned me. He said, I have got less than a couple of months to go. I've been appointed to the Law of the Sea, United Nations Tribunal. The UNCITRAL Model-Based Arbitration Act is my baby. I want to make sure it's passed before I leave. I have just heard that you've got a remarkable reversal. It's contrary to all principles of UNCITRAL. I said, you only read the judgment and drop 9 or anything to do with 9. Then you may not have a repeat of NTPC. Because old Section 1961 Act had Section 9. So he talked to this telephone, and then he made a note, and he made sure that 9 and all links to 9 were dropped.
I also now want to ask you, it was a time when your father had left. It was a time when you had to branch out on your own. What were those years like? Because it was also a time when at 34 you were suddenly designated as the youngest lawyer the country's ever had to be a senior advocate.
My father was appointed High Commissioner with cabinet rank in 1991. He came back in 1998. He was India's longest serving High Commissioner in UK. I was made a senior in 1993, 2 years after his departure, and had the distinction of 34 as the youngest, and by then rules were there regulating it. But when he left, I was in the middle of several insecurities. And I must candidly share with you a private conversation I had with him. I said some of my contemporaries have a lot of support in the chambers where they are. It's all very well, but I sometimes feel insecure. So he said a very perceptive thing. He said, according to me, your practice should increase manifold after I leave, and not till I leave. And believe it or not, after 91 he left, almost every 6 months my practice doubled and trebled.
Prophetic.
And it was truly prophetic. And as far as quality and volume of practice was concerned, I never looked back. And in 1997, at 37, I was appointed ASG. I was not political at all at that time, although I must publicly acknowledge that Madhavrao Scindia had taken a liking to me by then, and he pushed for my ASG-ship. My father was still High Commissioner, had nothing to do with India. And I became the youngest ASG at 37. And these years, to stand up to seniors like Venu, Fali, Soli, and argue against them, the only thing with you is your hard work the previous night and your sense of complete fear at standing up against a stalwart. So, you learn a lot on your legs in these kind of things.
Yes, and that's what brings me to my next question, Dr. Singhvi. You're a workaholic. Anyone who's seen you in the court knows it, because we've seen, my question will also be going through a day in your life. You're extremely busy. You work from Monday to Friday. You start your briefs on 14 days, 14 cases on Monday till Friday evening. You're working hard. You have a list of cases also that you've missed because of, on your iPad, Mrs. says the cases that you've missed because you're a Congress loyalist. You were the sharpest lawyer that the country has today. I also remember this incident that you were outside India, you were vacationing, you saw a vacation bench matter, you were at the top of your field, you thought you'll miss out on it, so you rushed back to India. What drives you?
You see, there are lots of questions in all what you are saying, large amount of truth, some exaggerations, and some are used as jibes or left-handed compliments to me. They're not always.
I would say
let
more.
Me explain.
What drives this? What drives this? Yeah.
See, multitasking has been the joy of my life. It has also been the bane of my life. 2 or 3 points. There has been a very strange thing in my life that whenever holidays are about to start and I'm about to take a holiday, it has happened right through from 80s when I joined the profession, when I had much less money and much less cases, up to now. Just before that thing, or just during that, or just before that, something very important is offered to me. So in the young days, I used to be able to afford to go to only Dalhousie and Khajiar with my family, by car and by train. So I used to be able to drive back, take a break for one day and come back and rejoin them after 2 days. There were no planes, etc. The modified variant of that is that because the stakes are high, so it's very simple. If somebody really wants you and they can afford a plane, then you fly down.
Yes.
I have frankly never done it for international. I think that particular episode is not right. But I have flown down several times, even in the middle of vacations occasionally, to fulfill a commitment where the people genuinely want. I don't press for it. And let me tell you, all this is now past. Today I do much less.
Okay.
But later on, when I entered public life, it is true that my days are, and it's not very good for health, and I've stopped all that now. But for many, many years,
yes,
as I said, it's been the joy and the bane. So the morning would be a competition between newspapers, between reading your leftover files, getting ready, and a walk.
yes,
At least one casualty out of 3 would happen. From 10:30 to 1, there would be a very remarkable aggregation of cases, diverse, and every case some top senior opposing you. So you are really under tension and you are arguing. But for at least 5 to 7 years in my early years in public life, and I would not recommend that to anybody, at around 12:30 or 1, you would leave the courts, change in your car, go hardly a couple of kilometers away to Parliament, and I would open, or rather I would be the opening batsman in reply to a parliamentary speech which Jaitley had just finished for the opposition, or Arun Shourie had just finished, or Yashwant Sinha had just finished. We were the treasury benches in those days, and as you know, in Parliament, unlike the courts, the respondent opens, the opposition opens first. To be the first speaker in almost every major debate for 2006 when I entered Rajya Sabha till 2013
yes,
is a very, very special and enviable accolade which I like. And I've opened all the major spaces, but it's a lot of tension because you leave the courts, you do it. You do it either just before lunch or at 2 o'clock in Parliament, and by 3 you are back in the courts. But then in the same day, frequently on the same day, at 4:15 I've taken a press conference. So this is, if I give an example, if you take X versus Y, a similar set of issues, and assume that there is the identical issue, the way you would put it in court, precisely, logically, dryly, volume so and so, page so and so in the morning. The same issue, the way you would put it to a parliamentary gathering, very different, a much broader perspective, a much more turn of phrase, very wide canvas. And the same issue you would do at 4:15 to a press conference, which would be relatively more superficial, encapsulating the world into a bite, gagar mein sagar, making it easy for the press. And the last, which I don't do on the same day, although 1 or 2 days I have done it in Meerut, drive out and address a rally. That last is of course hardly once or twice, but 3 in a day
yes,
is a diversity which few are, as I said, have the joy of or the bane of life.
This very time that you're talking about in the Parliament, I've seen you go from the Supreme Court to the Parliament back here. You've forgotten to mention that once you came back, you did the cases for the next day, and then you sat for debates at night. And we all used to gape at how you have this energy, which, like you said, you call it a multitasking thing, which we've all tried to learn from when we used to work with you. I want to ask, when you do all this, you're great at debating, what sort of a person do you think you are? Are you emotional? Are you undemonstrative? Would you describe yourself as someone, because in all the time that I've been with you, even otherwise, I've never seen one thing that you've never spoken ill about anyone.
Well, that's very kind of you, and I remember those days because you joined me when I was starting public life, so you've seen that multitasking, and there is a phase in everybody's life, there is an age in everybody's life. Obviously, this kind of very, very fantastic diversity, learning curve, and yet chaotic day can only last for a certain phase. and you grow out of it, and it's also not very good for health, I clearly believe. So I've not been doing much of this after 2013-14 to that pace, and today I also have lesser regrets. In those days, you make a mad rush to do everything, and that's not good. Today I try to the best of my ability to do the maximum. I still do a very hard day's work, but what I leave out or miss out, I don't regret. Number two, I think that degree of chaos, etc., in terms of the negative part and the richness and diversity in terms of the learning curve, makes you a little, snappy, because you don't have time to go into. So you have to be on the move. It's not being rude, but you have to keep on moving. And all of it, remember, is that when you are on show, all of this activity which I do, it somehow puts you on show. In the courts, you are on show. Between your parties, your client sitting behind on your head, two warring sides, the court and the public. In parliament, you are on show. In the press, you are on show. So this puts a lot of burden on your mental. You have to be on the ball, you have to be on the quick. I think that's why I call it a good learning curve, but it's not recommended for too long, because it's also, I think, too much of pressure. But I do believe that bad mouthing, which is a culture in all the three areas which I have told you, and you belong now to the press, and you know that it applies as much to that as to parliament as to the profession. Let's not be hypocritical by saying no.
Yes.
I think to some extent you have to learn that people are bad mouthing you all the time. I have had this bane of my life that just because I am doing things or I have certain amount of success, people are jealous of you. Now you can't go on retaliating, and you do feel sometimes odd, but you can do adjust to that, and ultimately realize that to each his own fitrat. I think ultimately the gusto with which you do your work and are reasonably successful in it is the best answer and the best pain in the stomach to those who are envious of you.
Absolutely, absolutely. I completely agree with that. I now want to also ask you a little bit about your relationship, your political patronage with Madhav Rao Sindhya. He was someone you had a very close relationship with. What were those, how did that relationship begin? And
my guru in many ways, in personal life, profession, in the values of life, has been my father. But in politics or public life, as I'd like to call it, it is certainly Madhav Rao Sindhya, and to a lesser extent Pranab Mukherjee subsequently. Madhav Rao ji, because strangely, for some strange reason, with a difference of almost 15 years age, took a liking to me early on, and we started interacting, and I started first advising him in law, but then so many other things, we had connecting points. And as you know, one thing I forgot to say, I'm a Piscean. So contrary to what you see outside, which is all logical, hard work, somewhat dry, rebutting, witty, snappy, Pisceans are actually introverts. So it's exactly the same with Madhav Rao. His outward persona seemed that he's a dynamic, on-the-go chap, but he's completely an introvert. I actually have now become antisocial. I don't like to go out on social gatherings. I don't. That's somewhat of a typical, Piscean, inward-looking thing. Pisceans are also hyper-emotional. Hyper. Contrary to, again, the persona which you project, which is combative, fighting, aggressive. Not emotional, hyper. And somehow, these two Pisceans connected. And thereafter, till the end, I was the only person who was to meet him at 3:30 or 4 o'clock on that Sunday when he died. I was the person who he telephoned that Sunday in the morning saying that I have to discuss something important, we must meet at 3 or 4 o'clock because this is important about, actually it was about the banning of Simi or the not banning of Simi and the position on that. I unfortunately got to go, so I joked with him, I said, Maharaj, when I used to want to pull his leg, I used to call him Maharaj, he didn't like it at all. How is it that the Maharaj is not playing golf on Sunday? He was a fanatic golfer on Sunday mornings. And he said, no, I have to go for some party work. I don't really want to go, but I will go. And Shilaji used to come with me. And Shilaji had to drop out that day because of a stomach ailment. And that was the morning he took the flight. And at 4 I was to meet him. And we got the news of the crash around 3 o'clock. The previous night he talked to me, talking about this thing. And the 15 days before that, I recounted these experiences almost as if he had some premonition of his death. Because he talked philosophical, he talked what would happen in later life, etc. in the last 1 month leading up to his death. So there was, I think, over time, as we grew, I know him for over 15, 20 years, and the bond grew. Pranab Da is the person to whom Madhav Rao took me second in public life. And Pranabda, for a totally different reason, was a very awesome personality. And you start trying to think of the emulation, to emulate him in many ways. Usual thing, visiting him at 11 o'clock in the night, never before 10:30. He knew that that's the time he would have. Sitting there, writing his diary at 11:30, and then he would discuss. Phenomenal memory. I used to always joke with him. I met him about 10 days before his untimely passing away now. That, law has lost a lawyer because he went into public life. History has lost a historian. He was all of that. And his grasp of precedents was amazing. And to be with him was an education, because you sit with him and he was a raconteur. He would, when I went to him about a month before his death, I had a long gap before going. So he started saying, now you're a member of parliament from West Bengal. So let me tell you. And he would then start telling you in the early, how he joined, and then in this assembly election, this was the breakup, this was the percentage in West Bengal. Just because I was a West Bengal MP and I knew nothing about it, of course, I was not interested also in it. But he would, and then he would recount a phenomenal memory and phenomenal grasp of precedents, of history, of what happened when, and a precedent-based answer on history, on problems complex.
That's
so
remarkable.
These are inspiring moments, when you sit with people like that. Yes. And 15 minutes with him, appointment would become always 1 hour. And we had grown very close by the time he unfortunately passed away. Yes. During his presidency, after it. So these are all,
Amazing. You were also handpicked in politics by Sonia Gandhi in 1990. On TV debates, we all know this, though you're not coming on Republic TV. How did your journey in politics begin in 2001 when you became the spokesperson? Like you mentioned, you've been the opening batsman against Arun Jaitley, Sushma Swaraj.
Very interesting rhythm. First of all, of course, you remember, I invented the phrase for you, the right person in the wrong channel. Now you are stunned into silence because you can't say it. I've just said,
no, I disagree with joke. That. I'm the right person.
No, but let me tell you,
channel.
Arnab is otherwise a very good friend of mine. Yes. Not necessarily in his views and in his channel, but otherwise a very, very, actually a dear friend of mine. Now, and I've known him as a cub reporter at a level at which you entered in those days. And I have no hesitation. I'm not into that narrow issue of politics, not to be able to say it on camera. But the two things you asked is very interesting. Madara Sindhya used to embarrass me at get-togethers. In those days, even if Sonia Gandhi was there, and I was not in politics, I'm talking of get-togethers where I happened to be there by chance and there were politicians around. He would always say that why the hell is the Congress party not using a person like him? And I would go and say, please don't embarrass me, I'm okay where I'm doing law practice. So till his lifetime, I got no political post. I was loosely associated because I knew more congressmen than others. But there were many other people for whom I would do work, etc. About 6 months after his death, Mrs. Gandhi suddenly made me part of not only the media committee and then made me spokesperson. In 45, she was gracious enough to offer me a full term in Rajya Sabha from my own home state, not a partial term. So the life in politics grows like that.
Right.
But that was also a different era where television debates had started becoming sensational, but nothing of the kind now.
Yes.
I remember how Jayapal Reddy, Anand Sharma and me used to sit just after 2003 and early 2004, after Vajpayee ji had won all the assembly elections, on the basis of which Pramod Mahajan advised him to prepone the national elections of 2004 against Vajpayee ji's wishes. And we used to go, in those days there were no OB vans, by the way. So we used to go to the channels. For our 10 minutes of glory, we had to drive to Noida.
Okay.
Most channels were in Noida.
Yes, yes.
I stopped all that for the last 15 years odd, but earlier we used to do that. And channels would be patronizing, said, yes, you'll do better. Nobody in hell, including us, ever thought that we will win the 2004 elections. And we used to sit and do maths. Jayapal ji was very good at analyzing. We said we'll do much better. In 2004, elections were the worst to handle in terms of media because the entire wave seemed to be against us. The BJP was unstoppable. From 2012 end, in quantum and value, my practice has increased more than ever before.
Yes.
These are all very strange ways. I don't think I'm become better or worse. I don't think there is any particular talent, but this happens. These are God's ways of teaching you things.
I wanted to go with that, and I remember what struck out for me and a lot of people was you went to court every day. There were judges. You stood there and you fought matters every day.
I looked everybody in the eye. I remember this April 3 weeks and May 2 weeks. I stood everybody in the eye, took everybody's gossip, sniggering look in my face, And I continued to go, didn't miss a single day of court or my activities. And in that June, I took my holiday, which I have done for the last 28 years or 30 years without break. And you'll be astonished, by July or August, the same people who were trying to be those nasty things were being extremely over, that's what really shocked me, which I always used to have a very different view of life. I was a little bindas. I used to work hard and not bother. And I said everybody is okay, decent, basically okay. And I used to take people at their face value. That I don't do anymore.
That's why you said that you've become a little doubtful of people, a little
very
caustic,
much more.
Cynical. But I think this also teaches me from you, sir, because you fought on, you had tenacity, and that's what won. I go on a lighter vein. A lot of people talk about certain parts of you. There are lots of anecdotes on this. That a lot of things are attached to a miserly temperament that people talk about. I've seen you do pro bono cases. I've seen a lot of work that you do otherwise. I've seen a lot of gizmos that you enjoy. I think a lot of ways you're a spendthrift. Why this miserliness
is something
also?
Which is an image which sticks with you. This is what they say, perception and image sticks with you. And it's very, somewhat wrong for me to try and justify myself in your program that actually the truth is the opposite. We live very well. Internally, the rest of the entire family, not my immediate family, but the larger family, accuses me of being spendthrift. Now, why it sticks to you is because I work very hard. So when I work very hard, it troubles me and hurts me when people don't pay for what I worked, which they've agreed to. So my guy telephones and reminds, so that becomes one reason why he's. Number two, all the other colleagues of mine in the profession who do more are somehow not blamed for the same thing, which also irks me. Number three, the amount, and this is not boasting at all, I'm just saying facts because I'm very open about it. I pay India's highest taxes for more than 8, 9, 10 years. Yes. Not because I'm boasting, it cuts my heart to pay them, and I get nothing in return. But I pay huge amounts of taxes. Number four, I support 2 or 3 major charities, large, and I enjoy it. I don't do it because I'm going to impress anybody or going to defend. But somehow it sticks to you because I tend to be upfront and blunt in saying that, look, Rhythm, you agreed to pay me 10 rupees well before. And I always ask before so that you're aware. Yes. I did the work and you agreed that you have to pay me 10 rupees. And now after 3 years you've not paid me 10 rupees. Now that somehow creates an image. And lastly, I think if you see my arrears chart, and this is again not a boast, you will realize that I can't be miserly because the arrears of unpaid arrears are so high that again it cuts my heart to talk about it.
We have to take that up with the clients then for you. I wanted to talk about you've often spoken about the large-heartedness, sir, that is missing at the bar and in politics.
That's a very major issue.
You've spoken very fondly, even though you're on opposite sides with Sushma Swaraj and Arun Jaitley. You have a nice camaraderie with Solicitor General Tushar Mehta. You speak about pens and other things with him. I want to understand, why do you think it's lacking? Because I had a delightful watch when I saw on the virtual you and Mr. Salve in the Anil Deshmukh case talking and having a good laugh about cases.
Those are more, I would say relatively minor examples, because this is good. You must have a certain relationship, you talk, you must be pleasant. But it's a much more fundamental point which you are raising. And I believed in it for last 30 years before I entered politics. I believe that the only difference between Pakistan, Bangladesh and India, among many other countries I can give, is this. The fact that Rajnath Singh, Jaitley, Sushma Swaraj, me sit next to each other in the bench, have coffee and do all the gupshup in Central Hall across the world with no inhibition. Because we have the rule in Central Hall is you can't report unless you tell you to report. It's off the record. Journalists should know that. That can't happen with the 2 ladies in Bangladesh. Can they sit in Central Hall? That can't happen in Pakistan. That is the strength of India. 2, in the legal profession, I have seen my father and Ashok Sen fight 6 elections. 2 he won, 4 my father won, for President of the Supreme Court Bar. They were the best of friends. Before the result was out, 1 minute after the result was out, one would telephone the other and say, LM, congratulations. Ashok, congratulations. We have become segmented. We have become narrow-walled. We have become completely fragmented. Disunity is the buzzword, not unity. And it is harmful to both the body politic. Today the amount of vendetta politics, today the amount of fear which stalks in public life is unprecedented, and it's sad. It doesn't matter. See, in India we have not had vendetta politics ever. It started with one state in the south, I will not name it. It then travelled to the east, where elections are going on now, one state. And in between it got fixed in Punjab because of the battle of the Sardars. Barring these three states, we have not had vendetta politics in this country in a big way. Now we have, unfortunately, that magnanimity, large-heartedness and bridges are becoming less and less. Similarly in law, what it has meant is a weaker bar, because a disunited bar is a weaker bar. I have to engage you not because you are a BJP or a Congress lawyer. When my tooth pains, I don't go and see whether the dentist is a BJP dentist or a Congress dentist. You go because you're a good dentist. That was happening till recently. I mean, I have appeared for innumerable BJP persons. Today, if I was to appear as a professional, there would be doubts cast on my integrity by every side. And by you, starting with you in the first place. You meaning not you, but journalists. So that large-heartedness has gone completely. I know for a fact that very senior top people in the Margdarshan Mandal have asked me to appear. Not now, earlier. So I said, sir, you tell me I can appear, I would be very happy to, but you tell me in the current system, if you appear, the journalists will first tear me apart, then they'll tear you apart, and then either of us will be able to do justice to the case. This is not the way it should be, at all. But unfortunately, I am now conformist. And of course, many other things I have left. I have a long list, as you told me, of large number of cases of huge monetary value, which I have left because of perceptual things. Today, Rhythm, my point is a very deep point, which you raised also, is that the compulsion to conform rules our life, and the compulsion to conform is the biggest inhibitor of free speech and free conduct, much more than censorship or government control. Today, I say, act and behave on TV and off TV much more because I must conform to an ethic which you as a journalist have set for me. What he should be speaking, what he should be saying, instead of the truth. You know, Trump has this crazy popularity. He was a very imperfect person. He was a very imperfect president, I would say. But why was he so popular? One of the reasons was a crazy reason, according to me, this is my own theory, that he defied the compulsion to conform. He did not conform. So people like that. And I think in this country, we should have less of compulsion to conform, which makes me say not the right thing, but what I think I ought to be saying, which would be the right thing according to the press and society.
I'm seeing so many shades of the politician Dr. Singhvi here when you say that you are you're a professional in a public life. Why do we see less of you in the political life? Several detractors of yours often say that you have less time to be in the political life. So I ask you this question, have you been offered high posts by the Congress or by other political parties?
You see, as far as detractors and critics are concerned, they'll always be there. I am not compelled to conform my life according to what detractors say, point one. Point two, I remember an episode when, in a lighter vein, our good friend, our collective good friend, Sitaram Yechuri, suggested that a bill should be brought not to allow doctors, chartered accountants, lawyers, etc. to be members of parliament, because you said time is limited for them. So both Jetli and I together in the corridors, in the galleries outside when we came out of the Rajya Sabha, we told Sita, we said that you want not only a parliament of unemployed, but you want a parliament of unemployables. Now, I don't accept this, that you should be a full-time politician with no other activity or talent, point one. I don't accept it as a principle. Two, the ones who do it are those with thriving businesses, whom they have entrusted to sons, daughters and family, and they are then doing politics. Three, I may not be that lucky, I have no business. So for me to be independent today of several vices, it's important that I am able to stand on my own legs and I am not dependent on politics at all, in public life at all. Four, so long as what you are entrusted with you do to the best of your ability, then not sitting around hanging in your darbar and having endless cups of tea should not be held against me. If you entrust me A, B and C, I leave 35 to 40% of my time to do public life. You value that time. In monetary terms, if I was doing that 35-40% also in law. So I do give you time. But I don't have time to come and sit in the darbar of Rhythm, Bharadwaj or Anand and sit and, discuss endless gossip. I may not sit that long in Parliament, and I may come to Parliament only when I have a speech.
Yes.
But you give me that speech and I jolly well work well at it and do it well, then what's your complaint?
True.
This is actually a complaint by people who do not like the fact that you are not dependent, that you are possibly, according to them, having the best of both the worlds, without realizing how much you have to, kill yourself to be able to do both. So I think it's okay. As long as you can do justice and dharma, discharge your dharma about what you are asked to do. Now, if the party doesn't entrust you with something, it doesn't entrust you. You don't have to go and, say that nobody has to criticize you for the fact that you are doing a law then.
Have you been offered high posts by the Congress party?
Those are all things which I don't want to discuss on.
Have you been offered high posts by other political parties?
Well, there are obviously moments when, even before I joined the Congress, other political parties have offered me.
You've always refused them, sir.
You can see where I am.
And now, in the recent past, there was a lot of talk about it.
That talk, of course, it's nice to know that you are being tracked and you are important enough to be tracked.
What are your hobbies? Action thrillers, Bollywood music,
as far as movies are
books,
concerned, action
biographies.
thrillers, which is a bane of problem in our family. Everybody fights with me on that. I like only one genre, but not action thrillers, the crass kind. I like mysteries, suspense, action thrillers. I don't like just, more of flat movie, etc. But I like other kinds of movies. I've seen all other kinds, but that's my special thing. Music I like, especially 50s, 60s and 70s Bollywood. And because I married a singer, I like to some degree Sufiana music. I know less about ghazals. I love to travel, which is something which has been neglected sorely, except once a year. I'm now trying to make it 2-3 times a year. Then COVID struck, so we'll have to restructure it. And reading biographies is my special passion.
I loved coming to know, sir, that you read Enid Blyton, something I grew up on. It was lovely to hear.
Oh, in the old days, Billy Bunter and Enid Blyton.
Yes.
And then later on, Tintin.
Yes.
So I think you need not be at all eclectic or patronizing about these things. These are also things which are very enjoyable. Even today, I've got all the Tintins downloaded on my iPad. And once in a blue moon to just read Tintin, although they are not quite now as good as they used to be in the old days. Is a great, relaxant.
Dr. Singhvi, as I thank you for being on the Legal Eagle, it's been so enjoyable to share a lighter moment with you because you're always striding in the courts when we used to see you rushing from one court to another, always having a smile. There's always a twinkle in your eye sometimes when you're running, and you always have a soft word for all the media, not only me, but several people. You always answer back, something I've not seen other politicians or lawyers do. It's a quick answer that we get from you. There is a wooden placard on your table where you sit, and every client who comes sits there sees it. I hope forever that whatever is written on that is always true. It says the buck stops here. I hope the buck always stops with you. Thank you for being on the Legal Eagle.
Very kind of you. Thanks a lot. Thank you.